Seth Godin. I feel like every day you're on the planet, you are putting so much confetti and good energy and creativity and possibility into the world, just being you. And what a gift for all of us. So thank you.
Well, when I sit down at the keyboard, I say, I hope Cathy will be proud of this. And I try to honor your energy and positive karma.
You know, some people say you have to protect your energy. And I like to say, what if instead you project your energy?
I like that.
You, to me, you're what God had in mind when he decided to do this experiment called Make People. Yeah, it's you.
We're going to skip the theology part of today's show.
It's just something called humanity on a level that I don't see often. And it's so exciting and it's so inspiring. And I was able to read through some of the yumminess from your new book. And once again, every sentence I'm saying to myself, this is a collection of words I've never seen put together. And it's daring us to think differently. And how fun is that to use our minds in new ways? So we're going to have so much fun today. We're going to kind of just choose a few things from the book, if that's okay with you.
It's totally okay. But first, you have to tell me what you've been up to. What are you cooking? What's happening in your life?
So probably why I said something that seems a little spiritual is because my dad just passed away July 3rd. But
I'm sorry.
As painful as grief is, because it sure is painful.
Yeah.
It's also such an experience of love. It's such a heart-opening, awesome experience of how deep we love. And that piece of it feels like such a treasure. And
I'm sorry. He must have been so proud of you.
That's so sweet. He really, really, really was. And I got to be with him in hospice for the last week and sang him Barry Manilow songs and put on Diana Krall and James Taylor. And I felt so full in those moments.
Yeah.
Nothing was missing. And what a cool experience it is to just be fully with another person and realize that you don't want anything in this life other than that, which brings me back to you, because thank God you don't need Shiva to make you present like that. When Shiva ended, and for those people who don't know, it's like a tradition for Jews. We spend 7 days in this thing. I didn't want it to end because the amount of presence and realness and kindness that was in the space was so cool. Yeah. So I love that you bring that everywhere you go, and it inspires everyone to meet you there, and then they feel better that they did that. So that's probably why I so effortlessly have always seen you. And you're just like a walking through the looking glass. If you're there for the taking, we all get to set down this dance we're doing and do like the real dance. So,
well, Diana Krall live in Paris is on heavy rotation on my homemade stereo. And the next time I play A Case of You, I will think of you and your dad.
Oh my God, that's so kind. Yeah, he saw, my parents went to see her in Tanglewood, and it was like the best night of their life. So I can see why, for all the reasons, New England itself is a mic drop. So that's going on. And now what's going on is I get to sit with you and talk about these really cool ideas in your book. So
the big place to start for the kind of people who love you is we don't get today over again. And it is possible to buy into the indoctrination of doing what you're told. But it is better to realize you can make a change happen, that you can make things better. And to do that with intent requires a strategy. And people don't talk about strategy, they don't understand strategy, and they need a strategy. So I wrote a book called This is Strategy because I want people to talk about it.
I love that so much. I love the making a better tomorrow. I felt like reading your book. I was like on a ride at Epcot Center. I think that's like part of their slogan. And I love the way you define strategy. So tell us what it means that strategy is a philosophy of becoming.
Some people like making plans. Planning is a statement of power and agency. I will do this, I will do this, I will do this, and then I will get that. Strategy doesn't accept that because it understands that there are other people involved and there is time involved. There is uncertainty involved. So I cannot give you a map. But what I can do is say, I am willing to not do things I could do today, to invest in making a change happen so that tomorrow or next year might be closer to what I seek. That is a philosophical choice. And if you're looking for a roadmap, the problem is the maps are never that accurate and the roads change all the time. This is a compass. This says, I understand the systems around me. I understand the people I am working with, and I'm willing to lean into the possibility of showing up to create a difference.
It's it's just so fun because it opens up our capacity to see greater when I listen to you talk. And that's really fun. And we go, wait, I do get this. I was born to get it like this. And it's so fun when you do that. You do that all the time. Part of it is, you already alluded to it, but you talk about this word that I'm about to say, which is empathy. And you just alluded to it, like there's other people involved. And you say in the book that there's a framework for strategy, and there's a few things that are in that framework. And I wanted to just touch on a couple of them. And I wanted to pull out the empathy piece first, because I think it's surprising and delighting to people when they dive into your work and find out that things like strategies and marketing can really be focused around things like empathy. I think that they're surprised. I think that we've been conditioned to believe other things. And so I always think that that's really fun. I've said to people many times, I've bought the book, This is Marketing, many times and given it away, just like I give away John Kabat-Zinn's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. Those are the two books I always have like at least 10 copies of, and then I give them away and replace those two books. Those are like, I tell people those two books changed my life. And what I say about This is Marketing, which I now know even more so is true about This is Strategy. I say to people, This is Marketing is really a book about radical empathy. That's what the book's about. And then people say, what? It's about marketing. And I'm like, just read it. And then they love that they read it. So why is empathy one of the pieces of the framework for strategy?
So the 4 pieces are time, games, systems, and empathy. Everyone is difficult. Empathy is one we think we should be good at, and we might not be. Empathy says, I have to have the humility to give other people agency, to give other people the ability to make a choice. Because if I'm not going to do that, then I have to have the power to order them around. I don't want that. I don't have that. So what does it mean to give other people this choice, this power? It says, I am not you. I don't see what you see. I might not want what you want. I don't believe what you believe. And that's okay. Because it doesn't pay to say if I were you, because I'm not you. I get to say, if you are you, would you like to consider this? And if I have enough empathy for you and I've chosen the right group of people to make an offer to, when I make that offer, many of them are going to say, thank you. So we don't market at people, we do it with them.
It's like a really good song. It's like listening to a really good song. In the book, one of the things that you talk about that I just thought was kind of cool, there was many, many of these things, but you said, choose your customers, choose your future. And a little bit of a derivative of what you're just saying is like, we don't have to be for everybody, where
We can't.
most
Right.
people think they do. And they've been thinking that since 7th grade, and it's very annoying and not fun at all. What does it mean to choose your customers, choose your future? And how do we give ourselves full permission to do that when we've been conditioned to think we have to be the person who's liked by everyone?
So that's the perfect segue. So if I'm going to give agency to other people to make a choice, and I'm going to give them power, I don't want to give power to a jerk. I don't want to give power to someone who doesn't want to go where I want to go. So, the simple example is if you appeal to people with your business who want the lowest price, who will switch at a moment's notice, who are very demanding, who say everything is an emergency, and who aren't very kind, that's who you're going to spend all day with, dancing for those people. On the other hand, if you forgive those people and ask them to go next door, and instead set up to do business with people who are grateful, who insist on paying extra but demand it to be better, who tell their friends, who understand that great work takes a little longer, you're going to spend your whole day dancing for them. So if you're not turning away customers as a freelancer, you're not serious about picking your customers. If you bend over backwards to deal with difficult customers, why are you surprised that you're attracting difficult customers? And when we pick our smallest viable audience, we can do our generous work. Right? So this miraculous podcast you've been doing for years and years, nobody who listens to it speaks only Italian. You don't apologize that it's not in Italian. You start by saying, this podcast is in English. You've already picked some of your customers. But now, there's some people who say, yeah, but where's the salacious conspiracy theories? Where is the place where Cathy rips people to shreds? Where is the this and that? You say, if that's what you want, there's somebody else on Spotify. You should go listen to him instead, right? The goal is not to have the biggest podcast. The goal is to have the podcast for the people you want to serve. And that's generous. So in the book, I talk about feedback loops, but I also talk a little bit about feedback. They're different. You should not give away the privilege of giving you feedback to people who don't deserve a seat at that table. So if I look at my Amazon reviews, which I have not done in more than 10 years, I will probably find more than one that gives me 1 star. A 1-star review tells me nothing about my writing because I have 5-star reviews as well. All it tells me is about the person who read it. They're telling me it wasn't for me. I'm like, great, but I don't have to read it because I didn't write it for you and you agreed. So we can move on. And the same thing is true for the amateur who wants to tell you how to do your work, for the non-client who tells you what you would have to do for them to be a client. You say, thanks for letting me know. Not interested.
Yeah, it's really one of the most powerful concepts because it makes a lot of problems disappear. It makes a lot of problems no longer problems. So often when people come to me with this, the problem is thinking it's a problem. And you talk about in the book, I think it's a sweet example, is the Cracker Barrel, and how the Cracker Barrel is not necessarily getting like Michelin star ratings, and they're not wasting any bandwidth on that. You say, you say, choose the source of your validation and choose your future. So how did they decide to make that? How did they give themselves permission to make that decision that they were not going to compete? And how can we do that without thinking? Because a lot of us grew up thinking there's a certain way to be an achiever. And if you're not getting Michelin ratings or you're not choosing to even be in the running for that, are you settling for being less than you're supposed to be?
Yeah. I mean, what does it mean to be elitist? Because there are lots of different kinds of elites. There are the elites with money. There are elites with certain kinds of power. There are elites who are smarter on certain kinds of scales than others. We're all at some level elitists in that we have intuitively decided what's important. And the number of people following you on a social media network is not relevant to whether you are doing a good job or not. And so, if Jackson Pollock were alive today, or Lee Krasner, it's not clear that they would be popular on the site formerly known as Twitter. Would that make them less as artists? I don't think so. The hard work is to find the maturity to announce what kind of elitist you are. So Cracker Barrel is saying, for the kind of person that counts on a Cracker Barrel-like experience, we will never let you down. And if we let you down, we're on the hook. But if somebody, highfalutin reviewer from France, comes in and wants to know where the tablecloths are, we can just say, I'm sorry, it's not for you. If you're not sending people down the street to an alternative who isn't a competitor, but who feels like one, then you're not serious about choosing your customers.
It's really just such a lesson in authenticity. I feel like we have a choice all day long that's usually pretty unconscious if we're going to choose belonging or authenticity, and most people just choose belonging. And it brings me to...
Can I stop you? I don't
Yeah.
like interrupting you.
Please.
You just used two words that were hot buttons for me. Okay. Belonging, which I call affiliation, is one of the three basic human needs. But don't default into saying, I need to belong to everyone. The only way to belong to someone is to not belong to someone else.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we have to objectify and separate, but it does mean we have to say, these people I'm going to put effort into. And if these people don't get the joke, that's okay, but I'm not going to worry about it. And authenticity is a crock. It's a trap. It's easy to get confused by. So like right now, neither you or I are being our authentic selves. Because maybe you feel like having a hot fudge sundae, taking a nap, or sitting in a tub right now, but you're a professional and you're showing up playing the role of Cathy Heller. I am a professional showing up playing the role of Seth Godin. I'm saying the things Seth Godin, in quotation marks, is supposed to say. That's what people want from us. If we're having a bad day, they don't want us to be a jerk. That's not what they're here for. So I am challenging people to be consistent. Professionals are consistent. Authenticity is a trap because it's an excuse. Basically, when people say, I was just being authentic, what they're saying is, forgive me for being a jerk. Well, just be consistent and then you don't have to do that.
Wow, I love what you said, that the way to belong to someone, it's not belonging to someone else. And I heard Rick Rubin, he was like everywhere for a minute talking about his new work, but I heard him say something like, the only way you know it's really good is that it's polarizing and not everybody likes it. Otherwise, you basically just made something that's the average of everything everybody already heard, and then there's nothing there. So I think it's really cool that we have a few mentors in the world, one being you. You're definitely someone who's mentored me so much more than you even know. And to come from a place where you can say that to me, because I see you as such a kind, fine human being. And it lets me set down my over functioning codependency and be like, okay, I can choose to belong. You know, I sat with the theater kids in the lunchroom. I didn't sit with the cheerleaders. They weren't interested in me. And that's okay. We're still probably not friends. That's all right. Speaking of the affiliation, which is really more to how you talk about belonging, you talk about the three things that people want. I'm going to let you share what those three things are and help us understand why those are the things, why you know those are the things, and why that matters in the work we do.
Once you have a roof over your head, enough to eat, and healthcare, most people only care about three things. And everything in our life is just fancy decoration on top of the three things. Three things are affiliation. Who's to my left? Who's to my right? Who am I part of? Right? Do they understand what I'm saying when I use insider language? Status, which is who eats lunch first. Is there room at the table for me? Who's up? Who's down? And the third one is the freedom from fear. The fear of fear, avoiding feeling afraid. Those are the three things. That's it. So if you're buying a fancy luxury good, it's not because you need to carry your stuff. You already have something to carry it in. It's because it sends a signal If you are paying attention to the latest news so you can bring it up at lunch, it's not because the breaking news matters in the scheme of things. It's because you bringing it up at lunch gives you status and affiliation, and on and on and on and on. So we have all this narrative about what is true and what is important, but it keeps boiling down to those three things. As for my source, there's a great book that almost no one has ever read. 1963, Keith Johnstone. It's called Impro, without the V at the end, Impro. And it's about status roles in theater. And his thesis was every good theatrical production, movie, play, book involves the exchange of status roles. And if you go watch the first 8 minutes of The Godfather, you will see exactly what I'm talking about.
Whoa, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember maybe 8 years ago, it started to become the thing where if you wanted to kind of show your status and you were at a dinner party, you would say, "What podcast do you listen to?" And before that, in my circle of friends, the people who were intelligent were talking about your recent blog post. And that's when I actually knew I better start reading that so I can be with those really cool people. And then that was truly the moment when I realized there was who people think are cool and then the super cool people. And all those people read your blog. They all had that in common. And I'm not joking. And it's like, it's kind of that's how you get in. That's the card you're carrying to get in, is that you know what Seth just posted. It's fascinating to me about the status piece. I think I would guess the affiliation and I would guess the piece about being no longer afraid. But the idea that that's one of the three things, why is that so important to us, the status piece?
Well, it's important to squirrels and owls and lions.
Okay.
So I believe that we evolved our way into it, because if you don't get to eat lunch, then you don't have grandchildren, and then your genes die out.
Okay.
But it got amplified by marketers. So what marketers have done is they've spent billions of dollars making us feel bad unless we buy something. They have made people relentlessly feel insufficient unless they have the latest whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And that cycle, amplified by probably $1 trillion worth of interruption, becomes part of who we are. This isn't just the United States. I mean, I've been in villages in places that do not have electricity where exactly the same phenomenon occurs. This happens if you just watch two people shake hands, right? And there was a meme that went around with Justin Trudeau shaking hands with someone who used to be the president. And when you watch that dynamic, the whole idea of a handshake, or in the Pacific Northwest hundreds of years ago, among indigenous peoples, a tradition came about called potlatch. Potlatch is aggressive gift giving. And it's when two groups meet, the chief will give the chief of the other group so much that he's standing there naked. He has given away all of his belongings. Why? Because it shows that you have enough followers and enough resources that you can get it all back. They'll just replenish this. Here, take this. And it's a status exchange. And it happens at TED a lot. And it also happens in the city where you live a lot. But it happens in a little village with no electricity too.
Wow. I love that phrase, aggressive gift giving. That's awesome. There's a scene in a Vince Vaughn movie where he gives satellite TV to his dad, and the brother's like, "I thought it was a $10 cap." And then they all get so angry at him and all that stuff. You talk about these three things not only to educate us, because I always feel like I learned so much sociology from reading everything that you write, but also to help us understand how to move our businesses forward, right? By understanding what people want. How do we take this to heart and not fall into the other trap of like selling people fake status, but at the same time, giving them meaningful things that maybe help their identity to better tomorrow?
It's interesting. I'm not sure what fake status is, right? So I think manipulation occurs when, if someone finds out what we know after the fact and they feel bad about it, they feel manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
But if you buy a Birkin bag for $29,000 and you get a Birkin bag, you probably aren't mad at Hermes for doing that because they made a promise and they kept it. You have enough resources that it's not fatal. Now, should the sales rep at Hermes say, here is the address of the Boys Club of Los Angeles, please send them $27,000 and I'll just give you a little plastic bag to hold your stuff? Perhaps, but the system, and we can talk about systems all day long, the system is already there before we get there. So the system of status exists. Now, in my case, because I have choices, and I think everybody has choices, I don't want to ship stuff I'm not proud of. I don't want to engage with people in a way that I'm ashamed of. So that means there are versions of status that I could sell that I don't. But if a corporation wants to hire me and pay me a stupid amount of money to give a speech, I happily charge them a stupid amount of money to give a speech because it's not stupid. Because the person who's paying for it needed to tell their boss a story about the speaker they hired. And the story is better if that speaker isn't cheap. So I'm actually offering that person the status they seek in exchange for me showing up when I'm told to show up to do something for them that demonstrates their status. Because they could get a speech from me for free by watching YouTube or listening to your podcast. That's not what they're buying. What they're buying is a story about status, affiliation, and the freedom from fear.
And in your previous work, you talk about, and this is somewhat related, not entirely, but somewhat related. You say that low cost is a race to the bottom. Mm-hmm. And not all the time, but often the reason something costs what it costs is because there's a tremendous amount of value that people are choosing with their choice to take that value instead of low price, which actually could be expensive, as I've learned from you. So there's that too. Is there anything that you'd like to say about that?
Well, and I know a lot of people who listen to you are freelancers or individuals. It's so tempting to have your motto be, you can pick anyone and I'm anyone. What do you need me to do? I can do it. And then if you say that, it's also tempting to say, and I'm cheaper than the other people. Because now you've eliminated all of the hard work of telling a true story that's worth paying for. And the alternative is to say, you'll pay a lot, but you get more than you paid for. Because that identifies which kind of customer you want. And if someone's saying it's either you or Fiverr or you or Upwork, say, please go to Upwork. Good luck. That's exactly what some people need. But if you need what I do, if you will get peace of mind, affiliation, and status, if I can help you avoid wondering if you did a good job, that's what I do. And that costs more. And I'll tell you why. And most people will say no to that offer, but you don't need most people. You just need some people.
Part of what really establishes this, especially in our lives, but in the book specifically, you talk about the method. There's like a list of 17 questions that you give that help us to kind of already create and facilitate something that eventually leads to us being able to stand by what we charge, because we begin with questions that set a foundation. And some of these questions, they're all really quite great. And I was reading them thinking, wow, I really wish I could just rattle off the answers to these questions. I'll just say a few of them. Maybe you can touch on these. Who are we here to serve? What is the change we seek to make? And then I'm going to hold on to the last one and ask you about it specifically, which is where's the dip and when should I quit? Because I also give out that book, by the way, The Dip. It's so good. But just these two out of the 17, the other two, who are we here to serve and what is the change we seek to make? I mean, if you have something worth selling, you should know the answer to those two questions. Tell us why at the outset when we're creating something that those two questions have to be in the strategy.
Okay, who's it for and what's it for? I can pick any profession you want. Let's pick stand-up comedian. If I want to make it as a stand-up comedian, the traditional method is I'll take whatever venue books me and I'll perform for anyone who's in the room. That makes it very hard to figure out what kind of stand-up comedian you want to be. Mm-hmm. And it means that you're constantly flapping in the wind. On the other hand, if you say, who's it for? I want people in the audience who understand the history of stand-up and who are well-informed and who can embrace satire and wry insight. I'm not here for drunken 19-year-olds who are on a day trip from New Jersey. That's not my audience. I'm here for a different kind of person. Okay, what's it for? I want the people in the audience to say, that was fresh. That was surprising. I feel smarter now that I heard that, and it was funny. So I know the who's it for and the what's it for. And Bob Newhart, who recently passed away, he could answer both of those questions, no problem. And if someone called up Bob Newhart and said, hey, we're having a bachelor party, can you bring all your bluest material here? He'd say no, and it wouldn't matter how much you wanted to pay him. That's not his who it's for, and it's not his what it's for. Whereas you see some, really guttural, crude comedian, they're clear too. Seth Godin should not come listen to me. He won't enjoy it. It's not for him. I'm not going to apologize. Who's it for and what's it for? When you have a podcast, who's it for? What's it for? But the same thing's true if you have a car company. If you walk into a Ferrari dealership and say, I got 3 little kids at home, I'd like to buy an efficient SUV, they don't try to persuade you to change your mind and get an Enzo. They say, my brother-in-law is at the Volvo dealership down the street. Tell him I sent you. This is not for you. So every brand and entity that we think is important, that we have respect for, has answered this question. Patagonia has answered this question. Apple has answered this question. Nike mostly answers the question. And then every once in a while, they come out with velour sweatpants for people who have never worked out in their whole life. Then it gets confusing because now it's, what is Nike? Who's it for? We're not sure anymore.
Yeah. Wow. It's so awesome. I feel like I hope that everybody who's listening will buy the book because it'll serve you, but also that you'll take out a pen and paper and start answering these questions, because it's very much a monkey see, monkey do world, and people fall into what other people tell you is the lowest common denominator of how you must market, which is email lists and webinars and whatever's the next thing that you then spend way too much time learning, when if you just step back and could answer these questions, you might actually stand out in a world that's all blended into the wallpaper. And so I just love how your mind works and how you invite us to use our minds. One of those questions, which is interesting that it's in the list of questions, is where is the dip and when should I quit? And I always think it's so interesting that as positive as you are, that's part of being positive, is that that's right. Something you talk about a lot. And I want you to talk about that also, because I've met a lot of we've done 950 episodes of the podcast. And speaking of comedians, there's a comedian, Pete Holmes, who came on the show. It was pretty cool. And he said he was pretty sure at some point that the dreams you're meant to chase are the dreams that chase you back. And there's a lot of people that write him and say, but I've been trying stand up and I know who I'm serving and it's just not happening. And there's something very cool and exciting about knowing when to quit, actually, because then maybe you'll find what's been chasing you all along. But tell us about how we recognize the dip and when it's time to actually give up, because sometimes the dip, like you say, on the other side of it is where the scarcity lies. So sometimes you don't know. How can we understand that better?
Okay, before I answer that question, this is the 1000th episode of your show. We're going to celebrate it early so that I can be on the 1000th episode. And then you can backfill the missing ones. I hope that's okay.
God bless you. I love it.
Thank you for having me for the 1000th episode. It's quite an event. I quit things more than most people, and I do it without shame. I do not believe you can professionally start something if you then require yourself to do it forever. or until you're kicked out. That when we do something, we are not doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
So there are only two traps here. Trap number one is you stick with something way too long. Trap number two is you become a wandering generality, trying something for too short, giving up and going off to the next thing. We're looking for the balance here. And the concept of the dip is that there is scarcity among professionals. So if you want to be a doctor, you got to take organic chemistry. Organic chemistry doesn't make you a better doctor generally. What it does is it wipes out most of the people who aren't willing to work hard enough to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the dip. If you can make it through organic chemistry, you're probably going to make it to being a doctor. If you can't, that's the moment that most people quit. The idea of the dip is to see it in advance and to never quit in the dip. Either quit before it comes or quit after. But you waste a lot of time. So at the gym, lots of people there in January, lots of people there in February because they all joined after Christmas. But the only people with six-pack abs are the people who make it till April because the dip is in March. So joining a gym with a year's membership and quitting in March is stupid. Don't join. Just don't even start. Okay, so the idea here is to say that you are not guaranteed or entitled to succeed at any project you take on. There is probabilities and risk associated with it. You also have a limited number of resources, time and money. So make sure you have enough kindling to start the logs that you intend to burn. That too many people, seduced by the media and social media, think that they can be a Kardashian. Well, someone's going to win the lottery, but it's probably not going to be you. So showing up with a few twigs and insisting that you can burn a really big log doesn't make any sense. The number of comics who made it onto Johnny Carson or the number of comics who get a Netflix special, that's lottery thinking. You're almost certainly not going to be able to have an intentional plan to get from where you are to a Netflix special without an enormous amount of luck. As a professional, I would rather pick a different path, a path where when I do productive work, I get enough resources to do more productive work and to continue the cycle through the dip to the other side. If when I get through the dip to the other side, I see that the next steps aren't worth the journey, then it's okay to stay. I'm quitting. I made it through the dip. I knew what was required. But now on the other side, a different situation, a different world, I don't need to do this anymore. And it's that process of beginning, middle, and then the other side that characterizes our life as a professional. So I guess the biggest takeaway strategically is make sure you have enough kindling, because when you run out of time or you run out of money, you're done.
I just love it. It's so radical to me and cool because I feel like we're so outcome driven and people tend to judge themselves based on a lot of really interesting yardsticks. And I think, my dad just passed away July 3rd recently. And in hospice, he was in his office. That's the room that he was in that was big enough for this bed. And on the wall is like his degree from Columbia and all the things that he did. And then there was this journal that we found where he wrote this poem about lessons from this jetty he lived out by the ocean. And he had started it and he didn't even finish it. And it was just so magical that he had even written it. So I read it at his funeral, and he was a painter for fun. And there was all these paintings and some sketches that he'd done. And there was a photograph of a glacier he took in Alaska that was right next to the diplomas that he had. And my stepmom was telling the hospice nurse about these diplomas, and he was a forensic psychologist, and he said, look at this picture I took of this glacier. And I just think what I'm saying here is that for the essence of who we are, what we take with us is the creativity of the beginnings of ideas and what's fun. And not as much about what people judge as being the prize. And I think we actually probably have tons of things we would all start, which would lead to many things that probably were very sustainable, but because we're so hell-bent on this idea of not quitting, then we lose out on a lot of beautiful creativity, is what I'm saying. So I so appreciate that. I want to ask you something from the book that is, it's similar, but it's different. You talk about Netflix and you say, our next move is often something that decreases the value of our previously hard-won assets. And it's not really the same point at all, but it's a similar point because it's giving you permission to just keep moving. And that is even more radical because that's when it's working well, or at least in the moment it is. So tell us what they did. I don't want to give it away. I want you to, what did they do that was pretty, it took a lot of guts. And
I love this story. Yeah.
Go ahead, tell it.
So everyone can visualize the red Netflix envelope with a DVD in it. It was 100% of their profit. They were a profitable company. They were in charge of the whole industry. They won. Blockbuster was bankrupt. And then Reed and Ted decided to do streaming. And there's a lot of planning that you had to go through to get from DVDs to streaming. And at those meetings, no one from the DVD team, including the person who ran the DVD business, was invited. They weren't allowed to come to the meetings because if they came to the meetings, they would water things down. They would play it safe. They would make sure that the DVD stream was prudent, right? And so what allowed Netflix to do this jump, which is very rare for a successful company, was who wasn't invited in the meeting. Now, if you're a soloist, it's hard because you can't leave yourself out of the meeting, but pretty much you need to. Because what we're trying to do is realize that sunk costs must be forgiven. It cost you a lot to do X. It was hard earned to do Y. But that's a gift from your former self. You don't have to accept it. You can say, thank you for this degree. Thank you for this reputation, but I don't want it right now because I want to go do that. And the alternative is to become trapped in who you were and give up who you could be.
Oh my God, it's so good. And it's really, I feel like the poster that you hold up, the billboard you hold up, it invites us to have so much more fun. It's like, remember when you were 8 and you would do that all the time? And even when you already had this game with your friends and you guys knew how to play it, you'd burn it to the ground and just try something totally different. And that was so much fun. This is why I say, when I talk about you, I'm like, I know he's a person, but he's not really a person because he's like this thing that's more energy than person. And I can't quite explain it. As we're wrapping up, you say so many beautiful things in the book, but one of the things that you say that's so gorgeous, I love it so much, is the future is an unvisited city, but we can see it in the distance. And I mean, that's just the best thing ever. Like for somebody who's such an optimist and an idealist, and you know, my kids go to like a STEAM school, and the first day of school, the principal got up and she said, we need a classroom of optimists because we need innovators. And in order for them to have enough energy to innovate, they have to be able to see a future that's bright. And I'm just crying. Like, it's just so important. It's so beautiful. And there's enough of a choir that's talking about all the stuff that's wrong. And we have to be able to see that city, that beautiful city. So what does that mean for us as makers, as builders, that the future is an unvisited city, but we can see it from the distance?
So, hey, Cathy, I'm going to Patagonia in a couple months. Let's pretend I am. I don't fly anymore. But I'm going to Patagonia in a couple months. You want to come? You have to pack a suitcase. You've never been to Patagonia. you're going to make some assertions and assumptions about what the weather is going to be like there. You're not going to say, if you can't guarantee that it's going to be 46 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm not going. You're just going to make some bets on the probabilities that a down jacket makes more sense than a bikini, right? And if you get there and the weather isn't exactly what you expected, you don't leave. You say, how do I pivot now? Because I've learned something. Well, the same thing is true about the future, which is all we can do is predict what the weather is going to be like there. All we can do is imagine what the probabilities are. We get to pack a suitcase and bring it with us, and we're almost certainly going to be wrong. But it is better to do all of those things than refuse to go. Mm-hmm. And most of us are surrounded by people who just refuse to go. Mm. And the world has changed more in our lifetime than in the 10,000 years before that. And this is as normal as it is ever going to be again. It's going to keep getting more unusual. And there you go. What are you going to do about it? Well, one thing you can do about it is get better at making assertions and packing a suitcase.
I love it. One of the last things I'll just comment on in the list of these slogans that you put in the book is, you're not sitting in traffic, you are traffic. And I love that so much, because if in fact you're not sitting in traffic and you're the traffic, well, that you have some control over. So help us see, why is that one of the 12 slogans as it relates to what we're creating and building?
So I wish I had 4 more hours to talk about systems, but the short version. How do we get billionaires, people who have more money than they will be able to spend in 10 lifetimes, to change their behavior simply by posting a list of the top billionaires? They move down, they moved up, changes their day. That systems are all around us, putting this invisible force of gravity to cause us to change our mindset. There's all this pressure on us to be moved by little tiny changes in the system. And traffic is part of a system. It is the system of leaving enough space for the other cars, figuring out that that was the best way to get somewhere, and driving a certain kind of car. All of these factors add up. And when you're sitting in traffic cursing the system of traffic, please understand the traffic wouldn't be here if you weren't here. And we willingly participate in these systems. And when we do, we give the systems more power. So what we need to do is find systems we can use so that we can change the systems we can change. And the mistake people make is cursing the big meta systems like capitalism, which isn't going anywhere, as opposed to taking responsibility for the more microsystems where they actually have influence. Because we get to pick which world we're going to be in. Don't sign up for games you can't play. Don't sign up for games you can't win, because that's just frustrating. We're all playing these cycle of games inside these systems. Mm-hmm. We have a chance to make a contribution, but we need to use our time and our resources wisely, because we want to be on the hook. We want to be responsible. We want to say, I made this. I made it for you. I see what's going on, and I hope that this will help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And in the book, you also say something similar in terms of the water and mm-hmm. how you can collect the water to sort of lead to this river rather than trying to create a dam or create something else entirely. And it's really beautiful, because it goes back to that empathy piece of just really coming to be with what is. And as Jon Kabat-Zinn says, not stopping the waves, but learning to surf. And I think that that's pretty cool, that you can help us free ourselves of the bandwidth we're spending being angry at certain things that just are, and then actually find whatever is singular about us that's going to help us utilize what is and flow with it. And that is just it's such a cool opportunity that you help us see that's in the book. So there's really just, it's very, very poetic, although it's also very strategic and very practical and pragmatic. So I don't know how you do that, but I thank you for reminding us that we have true creative capacity. We can really innovate. And I think the brain fog we're in from scrolling our phone, it like lulls us to sleep, and we forget how to think. We've been taught what to think, and you teach us, oh, this is how to think again. And it feels extremely exciting. So thank you so much for this book and for being you and everything, all of it.
Wow. Thank you, my friend. I can't wait till episode 2000 when I can come back. You're the best.
You, period, are, period, the, period, best. Thank you for everything. It's awesome. Again, it's another beautiful fireworks display, and it's so fun to hear you sing it. It's like, it's jazz. Watching you talk and reading your books is jazz. It's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Cathy.
All right. To be continued.